How's it going? This is the one, James, and today you're watching 43 brand new cards. This is video number 6. If you want to watch all other 5 previous videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button and go backtrack and watch the other ones if you missed the spoilers. We're gonna go ahead. We have a lot of cards to go over, so we're gonna go ahead and get started right now. We're gonna go ahead and start first off with Splendid Reclamation. This is a reprint of a card from a long time ago. A relatively long time ago, but it's 3 and a green for a sorcery. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Now, this card is extremely good with cards that have entered the battlefield triggers for lands, also known as landfall. In Commander, this is very good with commanders like Tatiova, Benthic Druid, which says whenever a land enters the battlefield, you draw a card and gain a life. So definitely pretty good reprint for Commander. And maybe there's an extreme landfall, failed or retreat deck in Standard that you can play this in, but I like this card. It's more combo-y than anything else, but could be really good. On to Matilda, Donhart, Martyr. It's a rare. It's 1 and 2 white. 3-drop slot in white is just so many cards. But let's read this one. The Spirit Warlock, flying, lifelink, and protection vampire. So you have your vampire hate right here, just in case a vampire deck becomes tier 1 in the format. Matilda, Donhart, Martyr's power and toughness are each equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. Okay, so spirit enchantment deck has some support now. Then it has Disturb for 3 and 2 white for Catilda's Rising Dawn. It is an aura, enchant creature. Enchant creature has flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires, and it gets +X, where X is the number of permanents you control that are spirits and or enchantments. Basically, Matilda, Donhart, Martyr just puts herself on top of another creature when it dies. Catilda's Rising Dawn will be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Moving on to Restless Blood, 2 mana 1/3 uncommon. It's a vampire. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, create a blood token. Sacrifice 2 blood tokens, transform Restless Bloodseeker, activate only as a sorcery. And it becomes a 3/3 vampire. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, create a blood token. Pay 4 and a black to have each opponent lose 2 life and gain 2 life. It would be cool to see this as a vampire cleric for some life gain synergies, but overall, pretty good limited card. I wouldn't be upset to have that in my vampires limited deck. Moving on to Child of the Pack is a 4 mana uncommon. It's a 2/5 human werewolf. Pay 2 red and green. Make a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Pretty good and limited. Savage Packmate is a 5/5 with trample and other creatures you control get +2 or +1/+0. I wouldn't see this in Constructed, maybe, because there's so many good cards in the 4 mana slot. You have a 4 mana 4/4 trample already coming out in this set, and also there's still a Seeker's Chariot at 4 mana, so what else would you want to be doing at 4 mana rather than playing one of those 2 cards? Moving on to Fleeting Spirit. It is a 2 mana spirit for a 3/1. You can pay 1 white and exile 3 cards from your graveyard to have Fleeting Spirit gain first strike until end of turn, which isn't nothing. You can discard a card, exile Fleeting Spirit, return to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Oh, so it can blink itself by discarding a card. Not even that bad. But exiling 3 cards from your graveyard is not nothing. It's a pretty good ability. But yeah, maybe there's a spot for it, maybe not. Cartographer Surveys, 3 and a green for a sorcery. Look at the top 7 cards of your library, put up to 2 lands from among them on the battlefield tapped. Rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, this card would be okay for Commander if you couldn't get your hands on like a Sky Shroud claim or something, but overall I think this card is pretty bad. Moving on to Infestation Expert. It's a 5 mana 3/4 human werewolf. Whenever Infestation Expert enters the battlefield or attacks, create a 1/1 green insect creature token with Daybound. Moving on the nighttime side, whenever Infested Werewolf enters the battlefield or attacks, create 2 1/1 green insect creature tokens. This kind of reminds me of Graveyard Trespasser in that it does one thing when it enters the battlefield or attacks on the front side, and then on the nighttime side, it does battlefield or attacks do 2 of those things instead. As a 5 mana card, I think this would be pretty good as a 3 mana card, but maybe not even a 4 mana or 5 mana card. This card would be pretty good and limited. I don't see it being play anywhere else. Moving on to Circle of Confinement is a 1 and a white enchantment. The Circle of Confinement enters the battlefield. Exile target creature and opponent controls of mana value 3 or less until Circle of Confinement leaves the battlefield. maybe that's kind of similar to a, I don't know, any one of those cards. There's a bunch of cards created in Magic history that do something like this. Being a 2 mana, doing a mana value 3 or less, reminds me kind of like a baffling end. Whenever an opponent casts a vampire spell with the same name as a card, exile a circle of confinement, you gain 2 life. So it's a baffling end with a little bit of upside. Baffling End does give your opponent a 3/3 trample when it leaves the battlefield and doesn't give the card back. Unlike Circle of Confinement will give the card back. So, but I still think this card's actually pretty good. Definitely see play. Moving on to Optimistic Initiate is a white mana human warlock with training. Whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a 1/1 counter on the creature. Very relevant that it's a 1 mana 1/2 that turns into a 2/3 as soon as you attack with it and something else. You pay 2 and a white, remove 2 1/1 counters from among any creature you control. Any creatures at all. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Wow. Not only is it a 1 mana that gets big, 1 mana creature, 1/2, not a 1/1, it also gets bigger over time, but it also removes artifacts and enchantments. I mean, that's pretty good. It's like really good. That's really good. All right, moving on to Oakshade Stalker, the 3 mana 3/3 human ranger werewolf. You may cast this spell as though it had flash if you pay 2 more to cast it. Oh, that's pretty cool. Cool text there. 5 mana 3/3 with flash with faithbound. Nocturne. It's just a 6/3. It doesn't have any other text. It just says the word nightbound. Interesting. So if it's nighttime, it's a 6/3 flash. I mean, a 3 mana 6/3 is pretty good if it's nighttime. Maybe this like slots into some kind of werewolf deck as in a 3-drop slot, but I would say this is pretty close to just limited. I wouldn't be surprised if it was in some kind of werewolf deck, though. All right. Allista Watcher is a 4 mana 4/3 human soldier werewolf. You can pay 2 in a red and tap it to have it deal 1 damage to any target. Not nothing in limited. With Daybound. On to the nighttime side. 2 and a red ballista wielder. Deals 1 damage to any target. A creature dealt damage this way can't block this turn, which is pretty good as a 5/5. So if you think about this as a 4 mana 5/5 sometimes, that also just makes things not able to block, it's really good in limited. Constructed, no chance. Moving on to Lambhold Raconteur. However you want to say that, Raconteur. 4 mana 2/4 human werewolf. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Lambhold Raconteur deals 1 damage to each opponent. This is definitely the funnest name I've had to pronounce. 1 damage to each opponent whenever you cast a non. And then Lambhold Ravager is a werewolf. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. You have 4 mana cards, a little hefty. I'm going to say this doesn't see playing constructed, but this is also pretty good in limited. In limited, there's a lot of board stalls, and if you can have something, you'll keep taking a damage, and you don't have to attack. It's pretty strong. I wouldn't be surprised if this is really good in limited. Moving on to Wash Away. Now, I think this is one of the best cards for constructed standard specifically, and could even see play in other formats, especially cards cast off Expressive Iteration or Gold, also known as Elrond's Epiphany. Wash Away is a 1 and a blue instant. Cleave for 1 and 2 blue. Let's read the non-cleave part first, though. Counter target spell that wasn't cast from its own hand. So, Expressive Iteration. Behold the Multiverse. Elrond's Epiphany. Anything foretold, basically. Anything from exile. Anything from graveyards with flashback. 1 mana, boom, counter it. Now, for the cleave cost, it's just counter target spell, just like a regular cancel format, which is already, okay. There's a lot of cards that say cancel format, but when you add on the fact that you could just cast this for 1 mana and counter a spell that wasn't from its owner's hand, that's really good. You also can counter spells that are copied, so if your opponent, Galvanic Iteration plus Elrond's Epiphany from hand, you can counter the copy for 1 mana, which is pretty cool. So a lot of uses you can do, and it's just literally not counter a spell unless your opponent pays whatever. It's literally just blanket counters. Pretty insane. Anyways, moving on because I don't want to take too much time. Daybreak Combatants. And a 2/2 warrior with haste. When Daybreak Combatants enters the battlefield, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and that includes itself. So, pretty good beater in limited. I don't see it. If this was 2 mana, then that would be pretty good in constructed. But 3 mana, I think, brings it to the limited category. Moving on to Militia Rallier. Let's see if this is close to Militia Bugle. 3 mana, 3 soldier. Militia Rallier can't attack alone. It makes it a lot worse. Whenever Militia Rallier attacks, untap a creature. So it gives itself like kind of pseudo vigilance or another creature, but being able to not attack alone makes this card way worse. Limited. It's not a bad effect though. Wrong. Classic Flame Breather is a 2 mana 1/3 human shaman. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Oh, there's 2 cards that do this, which makes a kind of like a spell slinger deck in limited a thing. Maybe this slots itself into some kind of burn deck in constructed, but I'm gonna say just limited for now. But being a 2 mana 1/3 that deals the damage for every non-creature spell is not nothing. Moving on to Moldgraph Millipede. This is a 5 mana for 1 green 2/2. Insect Horror. When Moldgraph Millipede enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards, then put a 1/1 counter on Moldgraph Millipede for each creature card in your graveyard. So maybe it's a 5 mana, like 6/6 or something, that mills 3 cards. Because you don't just get a 1/1 counter for each card it mills. You get a counter for each creature in your graveyard, period. So this could be a big, beefy boy in limited, but in constructed, no chance of 5 mana. Moving on to Flourishing Hunter is a 6 mana 6/6 common wolf spirit. Whenever Flourishing Hunter enters the battlefield, you gain life equal to the greatest toughness among other creatures you control. Now, big beaters like this that also gain life are actual bombs in limited. This card is going to be, especially at common, this card is going to be everywhere in limited. Gaining life is good in limited. Being able to gain life for your other creatures, it doesn't actually gain like 5 life or 4 life, whatever else you have, but there's a lot of spirit synergies and a lot of wolf synergies, so this card's probably just a bomb in limit. It's 6 mana though, so that's not nothing either. Moving on to Ancient Lumber Knot. It's a 4 mana tree folk. Creature control toughness greater to his power. It deals combat damage equal to his toughness instead of his power. Now this one we already went over, so make sure you looked at that in the previous video, me explaining that one. Moving on to Heron of Hope. It's a 4 mana 2/3 flyer. If you gain life, you gain that much life plus 1 instead. And 1 and a white to have it gain lifelink until end of turn. Now, this is probably a limited freaking all-star. You gain more life. It's a 4 mana 2/3 flyer, which isn't nothing. And then you can also give itself lifelink to gain even more life. So giving this lifelink with its ability actually gives you 3 life instead of 2. And that's pretty good. Moving on to Furrier Bat. It's a 3 mana 2/2 bat with flying. Whenever Courier Bat enters the battlefield, if you gain life this turn, return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Wow, this card's actually pretty good and limited. You're putting creatures from graveyard to your hand is pretty good. We've also seen a lot of life gain synergies in this video already, but in previous sets we already have a few cards that are really good with life gain. So having a flying life gain value deck doesn't seem out of the ordinary for the limited form. Moving on to Donhart Disciple, a 2 mana 2/2 human warlock. Whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, Donhart Disciple gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Now this is a 2 mana 2/2. There's like a green-white humans deck kind of bubbling around that you can definitely play in limited. This is a common, but it's probably one of the strongest commons I've seen. It'll be very, very good in limited, especially built around humans and 1/1 counters. It doesn't get a counter though. It gets +1/+1. But I mean, this is a Celestia human deck, and it could be pretty good. Thank you for the raid. But this card in limited, there's just too many good things. I mean, not in limited. This card in constructed, there's too many good things at 2 mana. There's ramp cards that you can play, Lotus Cobra. There's Innkeeper. There's Ranger Class. There's a lot of cards you can play on 2 mana that are not just this. So let's say this gets overshadowed in constructed. Moving on to Hungry Widgewolf is a 2 mana 2/2 wolf. As long as you control another wolf or werewolf, Hungry Widgewolf gets +1 and trample. Now, there is a Gruul Werewolf deck in constructed. Does this get played in constructed? I mean, is there enough 2 mana werewolves to make this card good? I know there's a 1 mana werewolf. There's a couple different ones. So if you can play a 1 mana werewolf or wolf, play this card. It gets +1/+0 and trample, and then the next turn you get to attack for like a 3/2 trample for 2 is not that bad. I'd say it's better in limited than would have been constructed, but I would not be surprised if this was played in slotted in the 2-drop slot in constructed werewolves deck. It tramples pretty good. Moving on to Blood-Crazed Socialite is a 4 mana 3/3 vampire with menace. Whenever Blood-Crazed Socialite enters the battlefield, create a blood token. Alright? Whenever I've been saying blood crazed socialite 3 times in a row, and it's not fun. Tax, you may sacrifice a blood token. If you do, it gets +2/+2 till end of turn. I mean, a 4-mana 5/5 menace is pretty good. I mean, I'm going to say this is pretty good in limited. In constructed, no chance. Moving on to Wretched Throng, it is a 2-mana 2/1 zombie horror. Zombies, anyone? When Wretched Throng dies, you may search your library for a card named Wretched Throng, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. So it just draws more of itself. I mean, it has 1 toughness. I'd like to see this card being a 2/2, but I get it. Zombies are a little squishy. Their bones kind of fragile, you know? It has 1 toughness. I don't know how good this card is going to be, but you could string along like 2 or 3 or 4 of these in a limited deck. It'd be pretty good. Moving on to Unhallowed Phalanx. 5 mana, 1/13. Common zombie soldier. Did I just say that zombies had low toughness? What is this, trolling me? Unhallowed Phalanx enters the battlefield tapped. That's it. As a 5 mana, 1/13. Holy moly. I mean, sure, it's blocker. Wait, there's a card that makes your creatures attack as though deal damage for their toughness, so maybe you just play this. This card actually just reminds me of, like, what's that crab that has, like, 17 toughness? Definitely just that card. Moving on to Cemetery Desecrator is a mythic rare, 6 mana, 4/4, for a zombie. Menace. The Cemetery Desecrator enters the battlefield or dies, exile another card from a graveyard. When you do, choose one. Remove X counters from target permanent, where X is the mana value of the exiled card. I mean, that effect's not very powerful. I guess you can kill a planeswalker? Target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-X till end of turn, where X is the mana value of the exiled card. I mean, for 6 mana, though, I mean, this is definitely a limited bomb. But 6 mana, though? Nah, fam. Moving on to Faithbound Judge. Now, we have a mythic rare wall. Now, before you just cancel the video, cancel me, leave the video, don't ever unsubscribe, unfollow, unlike everything I've ever done, make sure you listen to this card. 3 mana, 4/4, for Defender Flying Vigilant. Spirit Soldier. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Faithbound Judge has 2 or fewer judgment counters on it, put a judgment counter on it. As long as Faithbound Judge has 3 or more judgment counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So, I mean, Flying Vigilance is not nothing, chat. Not nothing, guys. 3 mana, 4/4 Flying Vigilance blocker. And then put a judgment counter on it a couple times, and now it's a 3 mana, 4/4 Vigilance flyer. Listen, don't quit it now. Read the other side. Disturb for 7, Sinner's Judgment. Or a curse. Enchant player. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a judgment counter on Sinner's Judgment. Then, if there are 3 or more judgment counters on it, enchanted player loses the game. If Sinner's Judgment will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Yep. Play this in your white-based control deck as a 3 mana, 4/4 blocker that no one can attack through. And then later on in the game, you disturb this to enchant your opponent and just wait 3 turns, win the freaking game. Moving on. Approach of the Second Sun, never liked playing against that card. Anyways. Eruth, Tormented Prophet. 1 in blue-red, and legendary creature, human wizard. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. Excuse me? You may play those cards this turn. Excuse me? Play this on turn 3. Turn 4, you go draw a card, and then instead you just mill the top 2, and then you just play the top 2 cards of your deck. But then also you could just draw a card, exile the top 2 cards, play them, play a draw spell like Consider or whatever, draw a card, and never mind, instead of drawing a card, exile 2, play those cards, wait, never mind, draw a spell, okay, never mind, draw 2. Hello? Also, this isn't very good with counterspell, because you want to exile the top 2 instead of drawing cards, and if you're playing counterspells, you want to draw the counterspells so you can use them at a later time. But with this type of card, you don't want to have counterspells. You want to play everything that you exile. This is like you like Light Up the Stage, and you like this card for sure. But as a source of continued card advantage, maybe even play this in a tempo deck. I mean, it is a 2/4. In a tempo deck, you're going to want all the cards that you need. And having a free let at the stage every turn just for drawing for turn is absurd. Also, you can just find cards with other spells. Exile even more cards forever. Pretty good. Moving on to Storm Chaser Drake is a 1 and a blue Drake for flying. With flying. Whenever a Storm Chaser Drake becomes target of a spell you control, draw a card. So that includes auras. The auras do target when they're cast. Maybe this goes in some kind of Jeskai Feather redeemed deck. Targeting this with like a Snakeskin Veil, draw a card. Maybe like in a blue-white auras deck, target this with your auras, draw a card. I think and this card also has flying, pretty darn good. Moving on to Sawblade Slinger is a 4-mana human archer. It's a 4/3. Whenever Sawblade Slinger enters the battlefield, choose up to 1. For a target artifact an opponent controls, or Sawblade Slinger fights target zombie, specifically an opponent controls. Now, I don't know if they purposely wanted to make this bad, but fighting only zombies makes this card awful. I would say this card is pretty good and limited since it's on a zombie. The 4-mana 4/3, which is okay on rate, a little bit underpowered, but killing an artifact an opponent controls is a nice upside, but not good for constructed, especially at format. Moving on to Reclusive Taxidermist. 2-mana 1/2. Human Druid. Reclusive Taxidermist gets +3/+2. Becomes a 4/4 as long as there are 4 more creature cards in your graveyard. 4 or more. Graveyard. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. Okay, so this is just a Paradise Druid that just becomes like huge. +3/+2 as long as there are 4 or more creatures in your graveyard. Like, you could definitely play some kind of like Sultai Mill deck. We keep talking about this Sultai Reanimator deck in these videos. And this card is like slots right in. You know, you ramp up to your Reanimator spells anyways. You're already going to have creatures in your graveyard anyways when you play Mulch and stuff like that we've talked about in the video. So, like, having a 2-mana 4/4, pretty good. Especially for a 2-mana card anyways, to test for any color. It's kind of good. Anyway, moving on to Dream Chain Spirit. 1 and 2 blue for a spirit with flying. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, choose tap target creature, or target creature doesn't untap during its next untap step. Now this is insane for limit. 3-mana 3/1 flyer is already okay on rate, but tapping a creature or having a creature not untap is like pretty darn good, especially because you do this every turn. So, like, in limited, I think this card's insane. In constructed, maybe there's like a place in some kind of spirit deck for this, especially because there's like a spirit and enchantment synergy stuff going on. But these abilities specifically, tapping a creature or a creature's not untapping, is usually only a limited thing. Maybe it's annoying in standard. Skull Cleaver is a blue-black zombie for a 2/2 with exploit. Whenever Skull Cleaver exploits a creature, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Okay, you can have like a Decayed token, and then you can just sack the Decayed token for this, and now you have a 2-mana 2/2 that makes a 2/2. I think it's pretty good, especially since it's already a 2/2. Even if you don't exploit it, it's still fine. Yeah, I think this card's okay. If you build a zombie-centric deck, this card can be good too. But being 2/2s for 2 mana is pretty good. Moving on to Hiveheart Shaman is a 4-mana 3/5 human shaman. Whenever Hiveheart Shaman attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card that does not share a land type with any land you control, and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This has been a fixing, very good and limited, especially if you're like splashing in a color. You can play that one basic land that's not green, right? And get that land automatically. There's 5 in a green. That's a lot of mana. Create a 1/1 green insect creature token. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of basic land. Activate only as a sorcery. So in Niv Mizzet Reborn, play this and then pay 6 mana to create a 1/1 green insect creature token with 5 +1/+1 counters. Let's continue to make 6/6s for 6 mana. I mean, that's not good in Historic. Don't get me wrong. Also not good in Modern, so don't get any ideas. But this is kind of like a Golos-esque card, but can't get any land that you want. And also pay 6 mana to make a 1/1 with looking at the playing cards for free. So definitely a way worse Golos. I don't even know how I feel about this card. This card's probably not good. It's a 3/5, just like Golos is. This is like this is nerfed Golos. 1 mana less, still a 3/5, pay a lot of mana, do something, search a library for a land. I mean, it's kind of like super neutered Golos. Alright, moving on to Old Rutstein. Rutstein? 3 mana, 1/4, legendary. Human peasant for Golgari. When Old Rutstein enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your unstep, ETB or beginning of upkeep, mill a card. If a land card is milled this way, create a treasure token. Okay. A creature's milled, create a 1/1. If a non-creature, non-lands milled, create a blood token. Yo. They keep printing cards for our Sultai Reanimator deck, so we're definitely just going to build it. But I don't know how good this card's going to be. This card reminds me of some kind of like the Golgari card that no one plays. It's like a 2 mana 1/3. Like you want to play it, like you want to think it's good, but then it just ends up not being good. You put 4 on your deck, then you start putting it to 3 and 2 and 1, and eventually it eventually just doesn't go in your deck at all. But like this effect is pretty good. It does happen when you enter the battlefield and the beginning of your upkeep, and it happens every turn. So there's that. It's 3 mana, so there's that. I mean, it's not necessarily bad. Anyway, moving on to Spiked Ripjaw. So 3 mana equipment. Equip creatures +3/+3. Whenever equipped creature attacks, you may sacrifice a forest. That's bad. If you do it, target creature gains trample. Sacrificing a forest just to gain trample is something you'd only do if you actually had lethal. But like +3/+3 on an equipment is still pretty strong, especially for limited. So I'm gonna give this a pretty pass in limited. Moving on to Blood Hypnotist. It's a 2 and a red for a vampire. It can't block. And a 3/3. Whenever you sacrifice 1 or more blood tokens, target creature can't block this turn. So the only triggers once each turn. 3 mana 3/3 makes other things not be able to block is still pretty strong. I wouldn't be surprised if it saw play in limited, but in constructed it's pretty bad. Moving on to Markov Purifier. It is a 3 mana for a 1 white black vampire cleric with lifelink. Beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. Pretty good if you build like a vampire-y life gainy cleric thing in limited. Card advantage for a 2/3 lifelink is not nothing. Pretty good. Not gonna lie. Moving on. The Mirror Hall Mimic. It's a 4 mana rare for a 0/0 spirit. You may have Mirror Hall Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield except the creature in addition to its other types with Disturb for 5. Disturb is an enchantment aura for 2 creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted creature except its spirit in addition to its Ghastly Mimicry will be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Now, this card is what we needed for Historic Garuda to come back. Listen, you always liked Garuda and you wanted to play it. Now you not only have 1 card to go with it, but you have this card. This card is going to be the card that you play 4 of in your Garuda deck to go Garuda, copy, 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 copy. And this also has Disturb for 5. So not only that, but you can cast Garuda if this is already in your graveyard. You can bring something else back, and the next turn you can Disturb this for 5 on Garuda, make a copy of it. Garuda, go, copy, 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 copy. This card's actually insane in Garuda. This card's insane in Garuda. I don't want to play against that, but it's good. Anyways, moving on to Bramble Worm is a 6 and a green. Worm, reach, and trample. When a Bramble Worm enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life. This is the huge fatty that gains 5 life that I'm talking about. Another one. There's 2 big green cards that gain life. Pay 2 and a green, exile Bramble Worm from your graveyard, you gain 5. This card gains 10 life, are you serious? It also has reach and trample as a 7/6. This is a bomb diggity. This is the bomb that you need in your green big old, not standard, in your big old limited deck. You want Bramble Worm. I'm telling you, if you get to 7 mana, you don't lose the game. You win the game. This card wins the game by its freaking self. Reach and trample. It has reach, it blocks fires. It has trample, it attacks through N1s. This thing gains 10 life, and even if it goes to the graveyard, you gain 5 more. This card is insane and limited. If you're a Timmy. Yeah. Moving on to Graph Reaver. This is a 1 and a black zombie warrior with exploit. Whenever Graph Reaver exploits a creature, destroy target planeswalker. Whoa, literally only planeswalker hate. At the beginning of your upkeep, Graph Reaver deals 1 damage to you. Yeah, it's a 2 mana 3/3. It's insane on rate. It also has exploit. It kills planeswalkers. As a zombie, as a 2 mana 3/3, just playing it by itself, even when there's no planeswalker, is pretty good. In your aggressive deck, you don't care if it deals damage to you. You just played a 2 mana 3/3. This card's insane. If you play zombies, you're playing this card, and it doesn't matter what anybody thinks. If you're playing zombies, you're playing this. It's a 3/3. It's insane. All right, moving on to Screaming Swarm. It's a 5 and a blue. It's a 6 mana bird horror with flying. Whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures, target player mills that many cards. Mills that many cards. I mean, a 6 mana 4/4 flying is pretty good and limited. And time to mill your opponents out for playing 40 cards. A 2 and a blue, put Screaming Swarm into your library second from the top. And if your opponent gets rid of this card, you just bring it right back. And then start milling again. This card's pretty scary and limited. That's all I have for you today. If you want to check out the next video, it's right there. Don't play this card again.